Welcoming in everybody to the latest edition, the post-draft edition, episode 8 edition of the USFL podcast. Zach Kyleman in on hosting duties this time around. If you haven't caught on, we keep switching off. Just a little bit of a tip with my good buddy, good pal, good co-host, the ref himself, Stefan Raychuk, in on the co-hosting duties with me. Stefan, good to have you in. Okay, are you recovered from the 5-hour marathon we had on day one? First off,
man, I'll tell you, I'm getting there. I'll tell you, I had a little bit of a USFL draft hangover the day after the stream, but I powered through it for day 2. But today, I'll tell you, it was a little crispy. But we're waking up. We're getting well. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a great week. It was a fun week, and we got a lot to talk about, even though we talked about a lot for that 5.5-hour stream, which, Zach, how it went well, would you say? You would say it went well.
It went extremely well. Not just well. I mean, you guys showed up in droves, as we said early on. I mean, we blew past any viewership numbers we had on any previous show. And now, you know, we have a bigger fan base that you guys discovered us at this point. So thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this as the freshest time for you watching a USFL podcast episode, glad to have you on board. Welcome aboard the fandom that we're bringing along. Yeah, Tuesday was great. Wednesday was day 2, but Tuesday was fantastic. And honestly, we wish we would have been able to do Wednesday, just like I said, when we were on the stream. Normal time jobs still get a bit in the way. We couldn't really get that in order. But today we are going to talk about some picks from day 2, as well as, of course, just evaluating bits of the draft and thoughts on the overall draft now that things are all said and done, and getting into some other tidbits that showed up post-draft as well that we got to talk about, even including the competition. You know, we'll be touching on the competition, if you know what I'm saying.
Spicy.
Yes, it is. It is getting. We knew this was coming, though. It is getting spicy, and we will hit on, you know, the big X that's marking on the spot. That was a lame joke, but I'm going to run with it anyway.
You've been hanging around me too much now.
A few nuggets before we get going, though. Remember to follow us on on your social media platforms at USFL Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and, of course, Twitter, where we are very much active. Probably best experience you'll find for us is on Twitter, not going to lie, but we recommend you follow us on all platforms to keep up to date with any of our new episodes or clips. Also, we are going to, at some point, possibly do a TikTok. We're still debating on it. So, you know, we keep bringing it up. Eventually, maybe we'll switch over. Let us know in the comments if you think that is a good idea to do so. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast version, check out the YouTube version. You know, see our live reactions, some live stream elements that, you know, the ref does a great job of bringing up to add to the conversation. I'm just telling you.
My eyes are very buggy sometimes.
If anything, just kind of tune in for that and see what we look like. And, you know, when you subscribe, click the bell. It builds morale. Trust me, I know, because I've done it, and I'm making sure that you guys check it out too. And you won't miss any episodes that way either. Secondly, if you've been following along, we got spring stock that's going to be coming up for the first weekend's game, April 16th. We are going to be on site at Protective Stadium. That's going to start at 12 p.m. Central Time. Essentially, what you are getting with spring stock, if you haven't heard yet, and especially for those that are new to the show that joined us after the live stream, you're going to be, if you're in Birmingham, Alabama for that event, you have a live podcast/broadcast that's going to be on location. We're going to bring food. We're going to have drinks, although it's going to be BYOB / whatever you want for other items, but we will have drinks available. We're going to have special guests from either the USFL scene or podcast friends from our circle that will be there too. All for 4+ hours possibly of your time, so that we can lead up to this amazing lead-off game with the Generals taking on the Stallions, or as we like to say, the battle between Ben Holmes and Alex Magoo. Now that we have the faces.
We got the faces. I mean, a long time coming, but so much fun. And spring stock, it's going to be a blast. Like I said, earlier this week, we had less than 500 subscribers. Now we're over 2,400. We hope some of you guys are coming to Birmingham. And if you are, honestly, you don't even need tickets to the game. If you're local and you're planning on watching the game at home, come on down to the parking lot. Like I said, even if you hate us, come get some free food. Steal some money out of our pockets. But the good news is there's other podcasts there as well. And there's going to be a bunch of people that just love the USFL. So just come and party, meet the community, and let's support this league. Let's show the world that Birmingham is the place to be this spring.
More details on guests and other information we will be releasing in the coming month or so, because we do want to keep you guys posted on everything that we are going to be doing, including the location, which we are going to have that finalized by next month. Trust us, we'll keep you posted. Finally, our good friends at Royal Retros. We have had a great job with having a partnership with them. They do wonderful works in merchandise, especially retro gear, USFL retro gear. And while you're waiting on those jerseys, sure, because they have to wait till they're pre-ordered and then brought to you May 15th, you can go pick up a retro, one of those classic ones from the 80s over at Royal Retros. Save 10% on all of your purchases by using code USFL Podcast at checkout. Again, just use USFL Podcast at checkout after you buy with your purchase of any said item from Royal Retros, and you get to help the show, and you get an awesome piece of gear along the way.
They're nice, too, because they're fully stitched. I mean, they are good quality pieces of jersey material, anything, really. The hats, the jerseys, and they even have shirts. And they have other things outside the USFL. I mean, they have the World League. They have some old CFL stuff, XFL stuff, because I know there's some crossover there as well. But, I mean, beyond all that, it's some top-notch stuff. And I heard that he might be setting up a booth at or near Spring Stock. So we'll see if you might have a chance to look at that gear up close, right up there in Birmingham this spring. But we'll see. We're getting there, guys. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
And it is another piece to the puzzle on that. But seriously, they've been a great partner to us. Thank you very much to Royal Retros on here. And again, check out their store at the very least. Trust me, they got some great items that you might want to see, especially if you're a football fan. Now, let's jump in to what we got to talk about and what we have to discuss today.
Sorry. I think this is kind of fun to do to you every week, Zach. I always throw in an extra one.
You find one last
one last one. But you know what? This is why we're fun. We roll with the punches. There's no curtains. We're not retaking it.
One thing, I am notorious at my job for leaving my water bottle. So this is like a thing now in the podcast space. I got one item I leave behind to come reclaim later. So what am I reclaiming today?
This one is an important one. We need to announce, or at least re-announce, the winners of our 500 sub giveaway and the 1,000 sub giveaway, because we did that during the live stream.
Yes, indeed.
And I want to give them a chance, because I will say we did that probably about 4.5 hours in to a 5.5 hour stream. So at least I want to give them the opportunity there. So Chris Mason, you are the lucky winner of the 500 sub giveaway. So DM us on Twitter to claim your prize. Send us a screenshot just to prove that it's you, because I know that I'll tell you this, Zach, I've gotten about 5 DMs on Twitter saying that they've won. And I know we only have 2 giveaways. So maybe one is you, Chris, but do me a favor. Send me a screenshot of your log. I don't know, however you have to do it. Show me you logged in with the subscribe button or something. And then the winner of the 1,000 sub giveaway, Tim Skelton. So the same. I guarantee you guys will be watching this episode. Well, I think you guys will be watching this episode. You might break my heart. You might. I don't know. We'll see. But DM us on Twitter. Send us a screenshot. We'll make it happen. We'll organize all that stuff. Now, here's something, Zach. I got to surprise you with something else. This is a surprise to Zach, just as it is to everybody else. You know what I want more than anything?
What do you want?
I want a YouTube plaque on both of our walls. So here's what we're doing. We're doing the road to 100K, baby. So I think the next stop is 5K, right? So 5K,
right.
We're going to do another jersey, I think, right? And then from there, we'll do another giveaway at 10. But then we're stepping it up to 25, 50, 75, and 100K. Okay. And they're going to get juicy. That's all I'll say. So I know we're very early in this road, but I say it now. I want YouTube plaques. I want us to get to 100K, and I'm going to make it worth it for you guys, and we're going to make it enjoyable for you. We're not just bribing you. We're giving you some free swag, but hopefully it entices you to stick around not only support us, but support the USFL and really just spring leagues in general. So sorry. Sorry, I hijacked it. I'm not even the host this week.
No, you see, you're making sure that I'm staying on track. But seriously, congrats to our winners, Chris Mason and Tim Skelton. Both loyal listeners of the show, viewers of the show. Glad you guys are going to get that gear and those tickets too.
Oh,
Don't forget,
you're right. Yes.
Forget that. Yeah, I was going to say, you get tickets to the game with that as well. So we will be, just get in touch with us. We'll get you those packages. We'll get you all underway. Now, unless I left another item back.
No, we're good now. We're good. I swear.
No. Hey, trust me. Those are important things to get out of there because we're going to do it. If anything, I was going to do it before the end of this show. Right. So
we would have got to it.
Good to get out of the way now. Let's get into the beef, or really, sorry, the meat of this. The beef makes it seem like we're already feuding, but no. Let's get into the meat of this thing. Right into just basically a draft recap. Day 2 items, people that we kind of raised our eyebrows at because we did the stream on day 1, and we're going to talk about the quarterbacks and actually rank them in a second. But we didn't really get to talk about day 2. We kept up with day 2. Day 2 was a lot more hectic, really fast because of the timings being much shortened for those rounds. We didn't really get to talk about day 2 much. Okay, first things first, as we're saying, rapid fire, insanely quick. It was hard for me to keep up. Like I was probably refreshing my page every few seconds, and I was getting 1 to 2 new picks at the very least. So things were being officially done. There were a few hiccups here, there, social media wise, but again, kind of hard to keep it fully on the nose when you have so many different names, at least items of images flying everywhere. The social media management for that day, it had to be, I mean, it wasn't 100% perfect, but it was pretty good.
I mean, it's about as perfect as you're going to get with, like you mentioned earlier, rapid fire. Imagine this. I work in marketing. I work with social media teams, and I work with creative and graphics teams. So I have kind of a firsthand look at what they were going through. And just imagine, every 1 to 3 minutes, somebody says, this name, this person, get a picture, drop it in the template, save it, and get it on social media as fast as you can. And don't make any mistakes. And I'll say, I mean, there was I can only think of 3. 2 that maybe had to be updated, and then 1 where it seemed like they missed one of the, what is the dang name? The word we had such a problem. The
compensatory.
Compensatory. Thank you, Zach. So
we
had
were saying
one of those.
Compository. That was the problem.
Yeah,
it's compensatory though.
But I said, like I said on Twitter though, just when you thought the USFL draft is over, boom, here we go. The Maulers come at you with one more pick.
I know. They just got to sneak one last one in there for us. It was funny because it sounded like they were like, in all fairness, we did really just miss this. Like they're being very, very, very much open about, which of course, I mean that's fair.
Sign them up.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: not everyone's going to be as friendly to that if you don't say anything. Because there's enough detractors about leagues like this in the first place. They'll be like, "Oh, great,
here we go again." Yeah.
But Blair Brown from Ohio, he at least gets his moment. He was drafted as a compensatory 30 in the 31st round, number 9 pick for that round. So, congrats to him also being drafted with the rest of the group. I guess he can be considered Mr. Irrelevant technically in terms of what he gets for his PR.
Right on. And I'm glad they did get it out there because they could have easily just not put that out there and brushed it under the rug. And probably other than like 4 people would have noticed. And then it's from if they announced that it was Mr. Not, right? So, I mean, good on the league and good on them for owning the mistake. And, I mean, in all reality, and I think I put this on social media too, that social media team deserves a flipping round of applause, right?
They do.
We didn't get like true live coverage. Yeah, we brought live coverage, and some of the other personalities in the community did as well. So, but I would say that was a perfect replacement that then like a true either live stream or broadcast. I mean, the money that they put in to get those custom hashtags, sign them up there, the stories, or I'm not sure if that's what they call them on Twitter, but those news areas, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, the explore section. They they essentially got the headline sports explore section bought, and they got it sponsored for themselves, is what they did.
And I mean, sign them up. They're not messing around.
I'll tell you here. I want to pin this question for you.
Yeah.
Because going into this draft, I think a lot was made about how it's not being broadcast. I can't see it. I wish I could. And, not everyone, but some people link back like, hey, the XFL at least did this at that point in 2.0, and the talk is, either you do a live broadcast and you do it well, you don't do it at all. Or if you do it this way, it better be really damn good coverage all the time. Did only doing social media for you deter from that experience? Because people wanted a premier experience knowing their players. That was what the thing was coming in.
My honest take, and this is a selfish one, I'm glad they didn't do it because it gave us a chance to do it. But let me put let me get in the shoes of a fan. I see both sides of it. Now, what I'll try to do is I'll try to weigh apples to possible apples here and compare at least experiences between what the XFL provided and what the USFL provided. So the XFL did have a stream. I think, and no offense to the guys that ran it, but I think that probably deterred more people than it brought in. I mean, looking back at the time clock that they had, it was literally the time clock for Windows that they were just sharing the screen for. The list of players was an Excel spreadsheet, right? And so, yes, they did have live coverage, but I mean, as a new fan or maybe a fan of the NFL, right? You're used to watching NFL drafts. You don't know anything different. And you stumble across this and you say, everything that everybody said about a spring league is true. Now, compare that to the USFL. No broadcast, but we got tables. We had the players, at least some of them with their families, a stage. So we didn't get a full broadcast, but we got the experience. We had a true to life experience of a draft without a broadcast. And if anything, maybe a tester of what we might see in years to come. Right.
Well, that's the leading theory is if this, again, you get through year one, can't stress that enough, with every show that we do, but you get through year one and then you can experiment a bit more, do a live show, maybe do a bigger production like Fox wants to do. I mean, it's a TV product. So Fox will know how to put on a good show. It'll just be about making sure everyone's in there or who you select to be there, kind of like the NFL draft in that regard. So next year, so social media, I actually, like I said, I thought it did really well at keeping people up to date. And the fact in all of that, they only had one pick slip through the cracks. And trust me, Blair Brown probably wished that his name had crossed social media during the draft. So I feel I would understand if I'd be a little sad by that. But you have one miss. That's not bad. There are a few deleted tweets here. They're understandable, but not bad at all.
Who are we to complain? Trust us. We went live and we couldn't pronounce some of those names and we were doing it live. So I completely understand, things happen. And again, just because I do work in marketing and trust me, Zach, I've seen much bigger mistakes and mishaps in much more important situations. And I'll leave it at that. That's all I'll say. It wasn't my fault, but others.
I can promise you one thing by training camp. By training camp, we will get probably no less than 90 to 95% of the names we'll know how to pronounce.
Oh yeah.
Because that was one thing with that stream. I'm not doing that again. I'm going to get all these, now that I know it's Magoo, I'm like, what, Magoo? I can't believe I even said it like that.
Well, the thing is too, once I heard Magoo, I was like, I actually know this player. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm notoriously bad with any pronunciation. So, I'll always say get over it, but truly I do want to try. Right?
Yeah. So who stuck out? What picks made you raise your eyebrows day two? I had a few of them. Like we're talking a lot, pretty much everything else. Like we're talking a lot of the skill positions, tight ends, receivers, running backs. We had a lot of the linebackers go, really all the linebackers except for edge rush types. If you're doing like 3-4, more linemen with guards and centers going as well. So a lot more people going in and getting the rest of it filled out. I mean, there's one already. I said center that stands out right out of the gate because we talked to him before the draft.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show. Hopefully we get to link up because he's not going to be playing on that opening week either.
Nope.
And he's linking up with his Battlehawk buddy, Jordan Ta'amu, Bruno Reagan. We knew he was going to get drafted, okay?
Oh, yeah.
We knew he was going to get picked up.
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Just makes it that much better. You see him go across that feed, you're like, yeah, buddy.
For sure. And I was watching his stream of the afternoon stretch earlier, and they were talking about the draft, and he was joking about how he's going to make Jordan Ta'amu pay up for dinners, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him. But he also brought up another interesting fact. He was the most liked and retweeted center pick, for the on Twitter. The most liked and retweeted. So, and I'll tell you this, I really like him being back with Ta'amu. I think the coach is going to be a good fit for him. So I think it's going to work out. And I'll tell you this, he made out because if and when the teams move to their cities, boy, oh boy, is Tampa Bay, like that is the prime spot. If you're playing in a spring league, I want to land in Tampa Bay. Nothing against Mike Riley and the coaches up there, but I'd much rather be practicing in Tampa Bay than New Jersey or New York, but New Jersey or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or Michigan, any of those places. The South hasn't made there. Again, it's different the first year, but.
Right, sure. So, I mean, as a player, your first thought is it's like you mostly care about being drafted. Anytime you or I have chatted to players, it's all about like, I just want the opportunity. The fact I'm getting this opportunity, that's the main thing. Everything else I analyze later is just gravy, but I'm here now playing. So like, Northern Division guys, maybe it's like it's colder, but whatever. They're playing in a professional league wherever they're going, no matter what. Now they get to all play in Alabama, of course, year one, so it doesn't really for this season.
For sure. Well, and there is an argument that cold weather is an advantage too. I mean, especially once there's travel going into play. I mean, if you're practicing in the cold all the time, at least you're used to playing in the cold to where that's the one thing. Tampa Bay on the road, having to go to a place like New Jersey, Pittsburgh, any of those places I mentioned before, it could the reverse effect. So yes, you get spoiled in your home stadium. Anyway, we're getting off topic. I do that best.
This is all year two conversation.
Yes,
what we're
down the line
trying to point out. But for year one, I mean, you got to be happy you're picked up. Like I said, and some of the faces it's exciting to see because for us, we're familiar with them. Like I said, Bruno getting picked up just for the fact that he been on the show. Guys day one, I remember like saying Chase DeMore, love seeing him on there. And there were some ones I've known from like colleges that I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm excited. So like for my Panthers, for example, they picked up. And I was really thrilled to see this for the running back section. Stevie Scott was very much an underrated product coming out of IU. He had a lot of highlight moments at his time with the Hoosiers. I think he's going to be him and Reggie Corbin. I think are a solid duo for running backs. Of course, Jeff Badgett over there. A lot of people are putting the Panthers as one of the top teams right now on this list in terms of overall draft. Even with the quarterback room, like you have a split. So like you have two guys that different experience, but ones that at least have upside. A lot of people are high on Shea Patterson right now, actually.
I mean, he was I liked him as the first pick, but you're right. And looking at even the first day of the draft, to me, that was the biggest shock pick of the night was Paxton Lynch coming in with that last pick. The Panthers kind of have that dual threat now at quarterback, or at least a good competition, right? Which is, again, looking back at the XFL, I think that's what made the Roughnecks so good. Although we never saw Connor Cook on the field, there was some good competition going into that season that made them both excel, right? And I think that's going to help both of these guys for the Panthers. And quite honestly, even in the spring league, we saw a healthy amount of coaches utilizing 2 quarterbacks throughout the season. So we might even see something like that here where both these guys get an equal shot, at least early in the season, to see who really is going to be that superstar, because I think they both have a near even opportunity there. But another name you mentioned, Jeff Badette, he's going to make the team exciting. Now, I look back and look at him experimenting with the graphical face visors in the XFL. They ultimately didn't let them use them. But come on, USFL, I know you're listening. Here's what you do. I'll chip in 10%. It can't be that much. Let's make it happen. It will make people flip out. They will love it, because the one thing I remember, XFL fans were bummed when they didn't ultimately use them. I'm sure there's a better excuse why they didn't use them. Maybe it impaired their vision. I don't know. But if there isn't a bad reason, I think you should use them. It'll help you stand out. And I think it'll make the fans that either remember that or just spring leagues in general. Mm-hmm. It's just something different, something new without having to change the rules, mind you. Right. Standing out with traditional football, because we don't know the rules, but we know they're going to be more or less tweaked NFL rules, which sign us up. I can't be mad at that.
We should be finding these details out in the next few weeks, would think.
Soon.
And I know that soon, that's the other quote, but like, it's funny, the next few weeks has become like an inside joke in the space. So I bring that out with a little bit of laughter in my voice.
Right.
And I know I'm sticking with Panthers here, but here's another one that I was excited for, and this is relating back to my interest in arena football. I got to give a shout out to Deshaun Dixon, who was drafted at guard in the 23rd round. He was going to be playing for the Orlando Predators. So, nice to see some Arena League action. And, we had a few guys in that space that were looking to see if we could get some, like Antoine Grant, Trayvon Shorts. We were hoping they'd get picked up. Mm-hmm. Those guys did not. Supplemental draft still is, of course, March 10th. So there's the hope. But it was nice to see some representation from one of those leagues in there too. Lyman being it in that case. Talk about other roster pieces. For example, the Generals. I love the roster in terms of skill position players for the New Jersey Generals. Here's a few that I got to list off. Just, and this is not even just skill, but like even defensive position pieces. Like we talked a lot about Devontae Bosby. First cornerback picked up for the Generals. Mike Riley connection. Dude's gonna ball out there. Dude balled in the NFL. Kevontae Turpin, TCU product, was a star coming out of college. He went and not only was in the FCF, but he also went and dominated in European League of Football for the Warclaw Panthers out in Poland. Mm-hmm. So he came back to the States, gets himself signed up as well. And then you look at the line and the running back tandem down there too, along with just the other receiving core options. So like the running backs, Mike Weber from Ohio State, Trey Williams, who was an XFL product with the Seattle Dragons. Not a bad duo as well. And then I'll even list off Darius Shepard, Christopher Platt. These are solid receiving options that I've heard about and have had on my radar at times. Mm-hmm. Big question for me, because I like this roster. Will Ben Holmes elevate his gameplay from his TSL season? That's the big what if for me.
Right. I think he can. I think we're going to see, well, especially because, realistically, he's got, I don't want to say a better team, but maybe a bigger, stronger team surrounding him to where that opportunity is there, right? Mm-hmm. There's some interesting names here, too, in day 2, right? Vinny Papali, right? Yep. That one's always interested me. We've seen him. I don't think he made the final cut in the XFL. But he was, I believe, in the spring league. I believe he may have been in the AAF. I believe he was in the AAF as well. So I love to see him get his shot here to kind of continue that on with the Bandits. The Bandits have an opportunity to be a fun team. I think the Stars too. I think Bart Andrus, looking at some of his picks, he's built a really solid team here. Everything from the quarterbacks to the kickers, right? Matt Mengel, who, again, has been kind of a little bit of everywhere. I believe he's been in the CFL. He was in the AAF. I know he was doing some practicing with the XFL, but I don't know if he actually was in the XFL. But, and he's going to be the kicker and the punter. So one thing that a lot of people noticed on that day, too, I think there was only 2 teams, maybe 3, that picked a punter. And I know a lot of people were confused by that. I kind of just understood. it's going to be a kicker punter situation, which, I mean, with a slim roster, why not? Why not? I mean, there's a lot of these. I mean, Matt Mengel and then another one, Austin McGinnis. These guys can kick a ball. They can kick a ball whether it's through the uprights or down the field. So why not let them, right? That frees up another either defense position, receiver, tight end, whatever it might be, when instead of having two kickers here, right?
Yes.
Another. I mean, go on. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say to comment on think about this. The supplemental draft is some of the. I think you're looking at value is with you're seeing the passes for punters. 5 of the 8 teams passed on punters. Now some of them, like you're saying, Matt Mengel. He's going to be dual, both kicking and punting. He confirmed that on social media recently. So
yeah,
it's all about the value at that point too. Who you got?
Oh, right on.
Well,
right on.
Even long snappers, that half the league passed on long snappers,
right.
For crying out loud. That's a supplemental draft piece, probably.
Sure.
Supplemental draft piece. You can wait on that,
And that should be coming in a couple weeks here, too. That's right around the corner because training camp starts, March 21st? And they want that supplemental draft to happen, I believe, at least a week before that. So, and this is just, there is no, solid date on this. So, again, speculation zone. But somewhere within that region, it's coming. It's coming. March is next week.
It's we're right on the edge. Well, actually, isn't it? No, wait, it's March 10th. Remember the PRs got it.
Oh, did they?
There.
Oh, yeah. Well, then sign us up.
Yeah.
See, I was telling you, my memory's horrible. Now I'm proving it.
No, I mean it's still coming up though. You're gonna have to keep things on the focus.
Right.
You know what I'm saying. Let me see a few others that stood out to me. Out of all honesty, again, I'm going back to the running backs. Just some of those options, like Larry Rose. I thought that was a really solid pickup there from the Breakers. Looking at CJ Maribel, by the way, for the Stallions. I'm a big Bears fan. He was on there. I loved watching him play his bits and spurts during preseason. But him getting his actual opportunity to replay, if there's a player I'll be rooting for in this league just for that connection alone, I'm gonna be rooting for CJ for that case. That was awesome to see him there. And actually, Coastal Carolina already they updated and they made a jersey mock-up for him. They're like, hey, just letting you know, we'll be on your side there.
I've loved seeing, the good social camaraderie that's come out of the draft. I saw that with Big Blue, Go Blue, Michigan, for Shea Patterson, and I saw a couple other schools either put out highlights or, like you mentioned, jersey mock-ups. I love it. I love to see the support, right? Treating it like a real league, because quite honestly, it is a real league. The USFL is no joke. I mean, nobody can really say it's no joke. It's a joke anymore. We have the players, and these are good players, right? There wasn't anybody, at least in the draft, looking at everybody picked, there wasn't anybody in the draft that I said, well, that doesn't feel right. Like, for instance, and I shouldn't say these things, this is mean, but if we did get a Johnny Manziel, I would say, well, it was almost perfect. We had almost everybody in the draft was a good pick. Maybe one is a little problematic and might not perform as much as we want, because we all know where he would have ended up. Let's be honest here. And I would have been a sad Gamblers fan. But we don't have to worry because the draft just went the way it should have. Now, real quick, earlier, again, just to touch, to kind of follow up on something I was talking about earlier on Bruno Reagan's show, he specifically mentioned there was a lot of high talent guys that got left out. So we speculated, what happened with a Luis Perez. Now, he didn't mention this name specifically, but I would think it's along those lines. There's a lot of guys that just didn't make the cut in the USFL.
Makes you wonder how the process of valuing these guys, these players, these men went, because, there were a lot of names I was shocked didn't show up as well, just from what I was expecting. I mean, Dantes Bird was one of them that I think people were like, oh, he's a lock. He's going to be in at receiver. There's no way he's left out. And he's out. You know, and that's. I think that a lot of that comes from those that just follow the XFL and other leagues, and they're like, well, as long as he's available, he should be. He makes sense. He was talented. Why not? But there's more talent that comes out in those years, as we were talking about with, just leading in and getting draft picks on day one. I mean, a lot of these guys are only a few years out, and that's around that time frame. Either the XFL being out, or even some that were post XFL that are out of the college scene. So, more talent. That's the thing with college football. You have a lot more people every year cycle out of that system that you have to account for. And these leagues are going to be looking for that every single season. So even like the XFL coming up next year, I bet you're still going to have people that will get left out because there's going to be new talents that came from 2022, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
That they'll slide in, or that were the year prior that they'll slide in because they want something else.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the pool's, like you mentioned, it's always growing. There's always somebody coming up. There's always somebody that's not going to get picked in the NFL draft. And that's going to happen every year. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, right? The year 2 thing. We've talked about make it to year 2. If you can make it to year 2, I mean, that's a big statement in itself. But I would love to see the attrition. Like who sticks around, right? Because I think you can carry a lot of these guys over. But what I would love to see is, it's expected that you're not going to keep everybody. And it's probably even more so expected that you're not going to keep all your quarterbacks.
Right.
But if you can get to the point where you're keeping at least half of them every year, every season, and maybe build upon that. It's been speculated that there's a higher income in certain instances for different situations, whether it be what we'll call like the tier 1 or the round 1 quarterbacks. Nothing's really secure on that or what the money is, but I would assume it's gonna get better as the league survives as well. And from what I understand, and from what I've even heard from the players, the pay is pretty good in the USFL. Right? Better so than the XFL for a lot of these guys, quite honestly. At least what the XFL was paying. I don't know what they're going to be paying the next time around.
Right. I mean, for base pay, it's fine. It's funny. We had as we're coming in today, we had a USFL News did initially leak something, but the league made them kind of retract that statement. So we can't fully say that, and I'm not going to put those numbers out because we can't fully say those are confirmed or anything. But if you want to go search up his Twitter, you can look up that original tweet for the QB compensation. Still waiting on that, if they even drop it.
I don't think it'll get released. And honestly, it's probably not in the quarterback's best interest to leak it themselves. So I don't blame them, right?
It's competition.
Right, right.
But I think as we talked already, we were assuming they were going to get a higher pay scale for their spots because, the importance of the quarterback, especially to these leagues and the success that they should have initially out of the gate, they're expecting more out of you if you're getting picked up at these positions. Hey, I'll tell you one thing. I want to recircle you. I felt like I stole a lot of time with the Panthers. What about your gamblers, man?
So I'll tell you this. I did go back. So for anybody that may have watched the live stream, I may not seem thrilled with the Clayton Thorson pick. And I think maybe I was a little rough with my reaction. I went back and watched some highlights, and I'm excited.
There you go.
So we're seeing a couple things. One, there's a couple interesting things that we're seeing with the gamblers. The quarterback's a stud. We're seeing some good receivers. Their defense is looking pretty stacked. They have a pretty good, not a good, but a good couple of guys from the Roughnecks. So I love to see that local touch, just seeing them back so sort of kind of in my local team, right? But ultimately, I saw a picture come out. So they showed Coach Sumlin at the draft, and I saw a face there. And I said, that looks familiar. And it's Robert Morris. So Robert Morris, he was working with the Roughnecks as well. And I believe he did some work with the AAF. I mean, he's been everywhere. Yes, and he's over there with the Gamblers as well. Now, I'll tell you this. I used to go to every one of those XFL fan meetups, just report on what the coaches are saying, this and that. Robert Morris is a good, fun, nice guy. I'm super happy to see him kind of move on into the USFL, especially for that Houston franchise. I know this isn't a player, but I don't know how many people are talking about it at all, quite honestly. But I think he's great for that franchise. But all in all, I'm feeling pretty good about the Gamblers. Now, if I were to say who had the best draft, I wouldn't give him that. I have three in my mind, and that I really haven't settled on which one, but my instinct.
Okay.
So I'm going to go on instinct. My instinct is that it was the Panthers. As much, and I'm happy to say that because, I mean, I'm going to tell you, Zach, deep down inside, I feel like I'm a Panthers fan that's lying to myself, but I have to stay true. I can't skip on the Gamblers. I said the Gamblers are my team, but as a kid, just to give you some insight, I've talked about it a lot. Grew up a Lions fan. My parents, my uncles, my grandparents, we would hear so many great stories. Oh, there was a time, son, when football was good in Michigan. Way back in 1983, there was this little team called the Panthers. You don't say. Oh, it gets better than that. Did we win a playoff game? Oh, we won more than a playoff game. We won a championship. No, that doesn't happen in Michigan. Well, it did. And so, sorry for the side path there. So I feel like, I don't know, by the end of the year, we might just be two Panthers fans on the show. I don't know. We might have to get a third guy. For now, I'm a Gamblers fan. They're going to go undefeated. There's nothing you can do. But week 3, ask me again.
Well, I could easily do Panthers here just because I'd be doing the homer pick, and I've already praised enough about the Panthers roster. And honestly, I can see the validity of choosing them as an option. I still am like, again, I'm revisiting the Generals overall. Mike Riley's draft I thought was really good. It all to me comes down to Ben Holmes. You know, and he has the intangibles and capability. You see the highlights. You see what he did at Tarleton State, which, by the way, Tarleton State had. It was impressive how many draft picks they got in this. So
sign them
a lot
up.
of guys coming from there. Great representation for a small school like that. But I think like him, I think if he elevates his play, I think New Jersey is deadly. I think there's a lot of ways they can attack you. Otherwise, I think the hometown team with Skip Holtz and company, I was pretty impressed. I think the Stallions are going to come out this year and they're going to be a force in the South right out of the gate. I think if I'm thinking in the divisions right now, I think you're going to see in the North Division, you're going to see the Panthers and Generals fighting for the top spot. Maybe and then maybe I'd say the Stars third and like maybe Maulers fourth. But again, things could change. But right out of the gate, you know, preliminary rosters, I'm thinking Generals and Panthers are going to be fighting for it.
I think the Stars are strong. I think the Stars are strong.
Now I will tell you, I like Brian Scott. I said on day one, I'll say it again, and you know the same thing. I like him at quarterback, and I thought Bart Andrus did a solid job overall with some of the picks to help complement him as well. One of those being actually Jordan Sewell, who was Scott's number one guy in 2020. So
we saw who made that pick too on social media. They released the video.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, "That's my boy. Get him on. Let's sign him up."
It would have been insane if they didn't, because you don't underestimate the power of connections with these players. So completely makes sense to have that. It's funny, even Matt Mengel, getting on there too. It's like, to be another one. That's my guy.
Right.
There, coming back to my team. But I think the Generals, otherwise, I think, like I said, Skip Holtz, I thought did a solid job with his overall roster. And I got them pegged along with the Breakers right now as the top two.
Dude, the Breakers, they did Larry Fedora tipping his hat, Milady style.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he built himself a nice team to go along with those jerseys, at least.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job. I liked a lot of it. I know he lost a pick, which we'll touch a little bit on here in a second. But I liked getting receiver like Sean Poindexter. I thought that was a solid pickup there. I didn't have any problems with any of the choices that they had on offensive line. I think they're building a solid line around him. Larry Rose, as I mentioned earlier, great. I think it's a great back from San Diego State, anchoring in the backfield for them. So yeah, good choices. I think I don't think they're the favorites. I still think the Stallions. I think Skip Holtz did a great job. He was talking how much he's embracing this opportunity to pick his own roster.
Right.
And I don't think he missed out on many opportunities to build what he wanted to create. So even bringing guys that he was familiar with LA Tech,
right.
A lot of these guys having connections back. That was a key part of this too. People, they know what they're going to get out of them.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Yeah. Overall, the draft is fun. We didn't get this live stream, but I was entertained by everything that came through. I was happy with all the picks. Like I said, there was one kerfuffle. Actually, let's talk about the kerfuffle, and then we'll get into the rankings. I feel like that makes sense. So this is actually something I think you pointed out before a lot of people were talking about it. So I'll give the floor to you to kind of set the stage here.
Okay. You're talking Derrick Jones.
I am talking. I probably should have specified.
No, it's fine. So I didn't really, I guess I more pointed out on social, really just the players' response, because kudos to Farhan Lalji for keeping the updates, not only on that, but the negotiation list players, how many that switched over. There were 55, I guess, that were drafted in this list that now are USFL draftees. They didn't sign. They were on negotiations rights deals, like for each team. Each team has a list of players with rights to those teams if they become available and they want to get those rights. So that's what he was talking about. Now for Derrick Jones, he actually signed with the Calgary Stampeders back in earlier in February what it is. And it was a little bit was made that he was indeed signed by the Stampeders. He wasn't released. So the Stampeders, by contractual agreement, are still allowed to retain him unless he was released. Now, like people like, Paxton Lynch and Shea Patterson, funny enough, both on the same team, they were released from their deals within a few days, if not the day before the draft. Like they were like to the deadline ready to go. Derrick was not. He still had a full deal. Now, Derrick made a bit of at least a little bit of ruffling feathers online saying, hey, look, I tried talking to get out of this. I expressed that I was looking at my avenues. And I'll read off his posts here because there's a few that he put together.
Mm-hmm.
His first one, he retweeted Farhan Lalji. He goes, "It's already hard enough. I'm just trying to provide for my family. For the Calgary Stampeders are just tagging the team to ignore me and have this tweeted out is very disrespectful," in reference to Farhan Lalji, referencing the oversight on there. And then he proceeds to then have another tweet later on, tagging the CFL and the Stampeders, essentially showing talks of like, hey, I'm looking at my options. I'm wanting to see where I can go. His defensive coordinator actually for the Stamps did actually say, hey, explore, or essentially alliterate and explore your options. And there did have a player personnel rep that he had to reach out to, trying to express that they were wanting to look separate ways and he wanted to be in the draft. His side of the story, because we don't have anything from the Stampeders, I don't know if we actually will at this point. I think they're going to be quiet, but his side is they didn't come back to him. He submitted and he's got a contract from the USFL. Somewhere along the line, I'm assuming either the league didn't know or just assumed he was going to get released from his contract. They picked him up. Next day, he cannot go because, Calgary has that contract and they aren't letting him go. So, this is where it all lies in. Now, there's both sides to this story, this argument. He signed a contract. He should play for the team he's on. That's where it is. The other side is, well, if the team's not reaching out and you're sitting there for a month plus or close to a month really is what it is, and you're going, what do I do? There's another opportunity, and they aren't being responsive and aren't keeping communication, then, he's trying to look at the opportunity like much we would as a person and go, I'll take a look at this avenue. I'm kind of trying to be in the middle of this because
that's how I
understand what Calgary's doing. They he signed a contract. They want his talents, and in terms of like in terms of the comparisons to Lynch and Patterson, people pointed out, and they're right, Lynch and Patterson were deep on those depth charts for the teams they were on in terms of the Rough Riders, as well as for Patterson was on the, I want to say the Alouettes, but I will get that corrected before we end this show. Both of them were deep on their depth charts. Simple as that. And so, yeah, you weren't going to, they were going to be released is what I'm trying to tell you.
Here's what could have resolved the whole situation, though, is all the Stampeders needed to do is say no or yes or anything, right? Then this doesn't happen. Or if it does, then it's a whole different situation. Then it's a completely different situation. But I'm with you. There's two things can be right and two things can be wrong at the same time. There's this weird feeling among the world that something has to be right and the other has to be wrong. And this is one of those scenarios where I think there's mistakes on both ends, right? Because I mean, if you're stuck in a contract, I mean, you're stuck in a contract.
Yes.
But I mean, to his point, I think I saw another tweet. He's unable to even get a passport to get into Canada.
That's part of why he was looking at this avenue to go and stay in the States, because, that's one thing with international players, and especially with those from the U.S. And I think some people don't realize that when they go to markets, not just Canada, but if you go to like Germany, you go to Austria, the ELF, for crying out loud, is all over the place. You have to have your international status and other documents ready to go and have that on time. And so this was part of the equation, and we've seen this with other people. Like, for example, Martavis Bryant, he was supposed to be with the Toronto Argonauts last year. Main reason he wasn't there, couldn't get his paperwork in order. And I know that goes back to the player in a little bit. People can say, well, the player should get that. It's like, yeah, that's true. But that's another step you got to take, and situation per player does change. Oh, yeah. That's the deal. Like, everyone has a different situation, and desire what they want to do. You can argue like the CFL does still pay more than the USFL in terms of US dollars, but you still have to go to Canada and be away from your family
and pay Canadian taxes.
That's true too. I mean, they do hit the pocket a little more.
A little more. Well, we're getting in dangerous territory. So never mind. Anyway,
I'm just being a little generous with that wording, but nonetheless, and also confirming, by the way, Patterson was with the Owlets. He was also with the Lions, so that is on the right avenue. Nonetheless, here the big end of the game is, I think you're right here, Stefan. I think some pieces just all around were dropped on the ball here on what happened. I mean, at least for at least the Stampeders, maybe you might want to communicate that a bit faster if you know your player's looking for that avenue and it's been communicated. For the USFL, maybe you stay, unfortunately, you kind of are hesitant there, or maybe don't want to jump the gun as much. Because, I mean, you could also, because there's people that point fingers like, why is he in the draft? If he already has that contract, and that's where you're stuck in the middle with this. Right. It's like the two sides talk, we don't have this problem. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Jones doesn't go in, but he has a better understanding. It doesn't feel like he's screwed out of a deal as the day is coming across.
I think it was a learning experience for all parties, including the USFL, which it's involved whether they like it or not. Right. I mean, from a player standpoint, you learn things just by experiencing them. From the USFL side, they'll probably have now that is a note somewhere that says check this box as well. Yeah. Check, and we always say this at work. What's the box that we haven't checked yet? And so for the USFL, this is a new box. Now when they're recruiting players, they say, are you in any of these, whatever it may be, CFL, ELF, blah 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 blah, anything stopping you? Which I assume they probably asked, but there may be a different way around that. And then for the CFL, I mean, there's another learning experience there too, is that there's another league around. And although they do pay more, there's circumstances and situations where people want to play in the States. And I mean, this is a perfect example right there. I mean, if you literally can't get into the country where you're supposed to play, then yeah, I get it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and keep in mind too, like the CFL, if we're referencing them, technically they are competition. I look at them as they've done this for years. They're the ones that have established things. You have to prove you can stay around, because they're very much like if you talking with their fan base and talking with those that have been following and essentially cover these teams forever. Right now, this is a been here, done that for them. So
rightfully so, right?
They definitely are. If we're talking about trying to argue our side, I don't have much ground to stand on because this league hasn't even gotten a full season in. They can you can sit there and go, yeah, you got to prove me a little more than that.
I'll argue it all day and night. I seriously will. I'll get on a dang debate stage because here's the real deal. I'll run through the list, the big broadcasting and money, and even a competitor involved giving their competitor money. They're going to be around for season 2. Now, I'm sorry to Justin Dunk. That I want to publicly apologize. Okay. That was my tweet that I put out from the group Twitter on Thursday. But I still do think it was a bad take. I won't apologize for that. I'll apologize for saying it publicly because I think there are public opinions and private opinions. And some of them, it's like your mom used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
So that's on me. But I will say, I do think it is a bad take that he's talked to people from the NFL and they're all convinced the USFL is one and done. I don't think that conversation happened. And if it did, it's not with like Roger Goodell. It's with, I'm the janitor for the Seahawks stadium. And I see my NFL credential. Yeah, the USFL is not going to make it. Now, at the end of the day, CFL mad. I don't think they need to be. I mean, realistically, the XFL and the CFL, I think, would have worked perfectly fine, coexisted. And I think we're going to see that same situation here with the USFL and the CFL. Because here's the real situation, Zach. At the end of the day, we always hear about these big American players going up to the CFL. You know how many of them usually do well? Not a lot. Not a lot. And this is something that Dave Naylor will say. This is something that Farhan Lalji will say time and time again. Just because there's somebody that played in the NFL doesn't mean they're going to play well in the CFL. Yes. And so I think realistically, some of these players like the Paxton Lynch, the Shea Patterson, I think they're going to be a better fit in a USFL than the CFL. So it works for all parties. The CFL, they want the Canadian style of play. The Americans want the American style of play. And naturally, the people native to those countries are going to understand that just natively more than somebody coming in from a different culture. Now, that's not to say that there's no travel and there aren't international players, because, I mean, we've seen some superstars come from south of the border, Australia, and even Europe. I mean, the ELF is an example of that.
Absolutely.
But CFL mad, they don't need to be. That's my take. The ref says.
Look, I'll say it again. Like I said, I respect and I really like the CFL. So I very much I want these to coexist. I don't see this as we don't have to be angry because of that being there. And I didn't think I think Justin, whatever it was with that posting, maybe he does have people telling you that or not. I don't know. But I think these can coexist, I even still, and I know this will sound crazy to some people, I still think there is a path that you can see the XFL, the USFL, and the CFL all have their times in the sun, mainly because they all generally play in a different area of the year. But you can see a path where these guys all have their own avenues and times to have enjoyment. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It doesn't always have to be a definitive end, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's kind of like what I said earlier. Two things don't have to be one good and one bad. Two things can be good, or two things can be bad, or two things can quite honestly be both in different pieces of them. And it's very similar to, it's not a lot, but there are some XFL fans out there that want the USFL to fail. And on the other side of the coin, there's some USFL fans that don't want the XFL to survive, because there's that rivalry thing there. I'd say more or less they coexist, right? They coexist. But yeah, I don't want to see that from the CFL either. At the end of the day, here's what happens when you have three alternative leagues. That's three different opportunities for these players. And that's already on top of FCF and ELF to a certain extent, right? And we're seeing like a weird mini resurgence in arena football. I mean, better than I do. You're the one with the arena podcast.
I could tell you all about arena if we had time, but I don't want to.
I mean, we're getting to this great point to where, back with the old XFL in 2001. After that, I said, man, well, it ain't going to happen for a while. And then it really took it to about 2010 with the UFL, and that survived 3 or 2 seasons. I can't recall.
It was three.
3.
They 09. Well, I guess 4 because they 09 to 12.
Right.
They had the 2012 season and out. So.
And I mean, they did well for themselves. But since then, we've seen this kind of starting with the AAF. I think spring football could work. So we've seen so many. I mean, the AAF did it. Then Vince McMahon brought it up. That went down for the illness that we cannot name. So it's not their fault, but it quickly got picked up. I mean, for a steal, mind you, they got it for a flipping steal. But now we're seeing the USFL. We've seen the emergence of fan-controlled football. We're with the ELF. This is the greatest time to be a football player because there's so many flipping opportunities out there. And quite honestly, a lot of them are good. If I were to guess, and this is a guess, this is speculation zone, my guess is that the XFL is going to pay similar to what they did before and similar to what the USFL does now, which is good. CFL, good rates. I don't know about the ELF. I just don't know to say if it's good or bad, but I assume it's okay. I know they had some troubles, but they have some committees and checks and balances now. But those are the learning experiences you get. Season 1 is never going to be perfect. Season 2 is never going to be perfect.
We actually had, I got a retread here from day 1 because someone pointed out to me, I was like, man, I hope some ELF guys get picked up. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, day 1, I missed this. I feel bad. Colin Hill, who played for the Berlin Thunder, he is a defensive end. He got picked up day 1. So already getting an impact across the ocean. That was exactly what that league was designed for. By the way.
Right on. Right on.
So, yeah, there are many opportunities. I know not everyone, there's obviously people being realistic. Yeah, maybe not all of them will be around. I still think there's ways that they can, and we'll even might as well continue the conversation with this because it's in the same vein, because we hinted at the beginning of the show, XFL had some news in its own that did shock not just alternative football, but a lot of people in the NFL circles because the XFL is partnering up with the NFL on a few fronts officially. Like NFL football operations put out that they were working with them, and this includes such pieces with these avenues of collaboration that include international football development, something that they were hinting at outside of here. Along with scouting, we're also talking about testing of game rules and player protections and safety, like 2 elements that they have been, especially the player development and the rules and game-changing elements they have been pushing hard. Right. And we bring this up because, again, much like the CFL, this is kind of that realm of competition you're in. What is the next level below the NFL? You're going to be talking and also going for this talent pool with the same people. And you have to not look away from you have to look at the XFL every once in a while. I still think building your own product is important, focusing on yourself, but your competition does have the big shield in its corner now to where they can use that kind of willy-nilly saying, hey, look what we got.
Right. Right. It's a good to talk about. I have a couple hot takes on this that I don't know if some people might like, some people might not. We'll see.
All right. I've been curious.
They're hot takes. They're hot takes. So first and foremost, do I think this impacts the USFL? Not at all. I'll say that first because I saw a couple people online said, "Oh, USFL's dead now."
I did see that.
Not at all. I don't think so at all. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, do you know what this tells me? And this is a hot take, speculation zone.
Ooh.
This tells me, or this at least reconfirms what I've thought, that Redbird doesn't feel comfortable doing this alone. They need somebody. First, they wanted the CFL. They said no. They went back to the old drawing board. They found a buddy at ESPN. They found a couple of connections from the NFL, and they went that route. And the NFL, I mean, wisely enough, said, why not? So realistically, they're not a development league for the NFL, which I like. I don't want them to be a development league for the NFL. They're more of a testing ground, a petri dish, as it's been called online, to kind of like a testing grounds. So, yes, I think this keeps them secure for season 1, but I by no means think this secures them a season 2. Now, this is only good for the league. So I want to preface that. I don't want to say that Because I did see some people online say, "Oh, wow, now they're with the NFL. That makes it boring." Them not being like an official feeder league and trading the rosters and things like that, I think it's going to be different enough. This is more for the NFL to say, boy, every playoffs, people get really angry at our overtime rules. Yeah. I mean, they get really mad. And, it's kind of hard to test these rules with 40, 50 million people watching. But hey, you, Danny Garcia and The Rock, you got a football company, right? You're trying to get off your ground? Well, here's the deal. We're going to give you some good PR, and we get rights to your video, maybe not selling rights, but rights to access them, and maybe even say, hey, some of that data that you have, because, I mean, realistically, football now isn't like when we were kids. I mean, there's chips in the shoulder pads. They're monitoring every movement, every impact. I mean, how do you think we're learning about the impacts of impacts, really, right?
Yeah.
There's sensors in helmets, there's sensors in pads, there's even sensors just in the cloth on the jersey to maintain speed. That the NFL, I mean, they could pay so much money for that data, but they're essentially going to get it for free by giving the XFL some good press and somebody in their corner. Because again, you mentioned this. I mean, there's nothing bad with saying, hey, look who's behind our back, right? Now, I feel like the USFL has the same thing with Fox, right? I feel like they're equal-ish partnerships. Both have their pros, and both have maybe not so much pros, just from history and things like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, does it impact the USFL? I don't think so. I don't think it matters at all. Sure. Would the USFL like a partnership with the NFL? Yeah. Will they get it? Maybe. This doesn't mean that they're not, right? And quite honestly, I don't think they need to either. I kind of like the idea of them being separate, but I don't think this hurts the XFL for being associated with it. Now, I said a lot. I probably angered half of our audience. I'm curious, what's your take?
Well, I mean, hey, I don't know if they'll be angry. We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, the comments never hold back.
Well, okay, look, this was kind of we were talking in our last show, like a little bit where it's like all these announcements last week like suffocated out the competition to even drop anything, and they finally found a place to drop it. And there had been hints that maybe the NFL was going to be involved. There were some screenshots from meetings that had NFL logos on some of the media materials. And so here we are. Now, what does this all break down to? It's going to be a lot of stuff that the XFL already was going to try. The NFL now gets to say, hey, how about you try this for us so we don't screw up during the season? Because as an NFL fan, I actually really like that, because why experiment with your product during the season when you can have a league that essentially does it for you? They come back with results and you go, thanks. We'll use this or not use this, like the XFL kickoff. I think that it's going to finally get adopted because now that they're going to get a whole season, more data, I think they pick it up. I think that this is finally the avenue that the NFL stops screwing around. They say, that's actually really good. So that's one of the things that comes out of that. That's great. What the XFL doesn't get out of this, they're partners in terms of what they share in data. The NFL is not putting a dime into the XFL. And I have to stress that heavily, because if this was a developmental league for the NFL, they would be putting their money in. It's going to be, we would be basically talking about NFL Europe, but in the States, where, you're going to get possibly players' rights between teams. You have to talk about NFLPA relationships with this, which the AAF couldn't figure out because it was time sensitive, and the XFL would need some time if that ever were to happen. The XFL, though, again, they aren't getting money out of this deal that I am aware of, that anyone's aware of right now. So it still lies on Redbird Capital for the most part, because they're the main funders of this, to come up, push through, as I've stated, the initial losses in the first few years, the traditional method, to then get an upswing into the black on the graph. This is what we're talking about. Two economic kind of systems that these leagues are doing. The USFL is the other one I'm mentioning that you're going to be seeing. It's an experiment. Now the NFL helps a lot for the PR. And that's something that I think just the power of Dwayne The Rock Johnson throwing a tweet out about the damn thing people losing their minds. The NFL being in their corner. What I like for them is that NFL fans now have some validity to look at a league, because a lot of these guys say, well, if it's not the NFL, I don't want it. Now the NFL is working with them. Now they go, okay, maybe there is something here. So that's what they get out of it. They don't get any money. They don't get any monetary value that I am understanding right now, and I still haven't found anything even going into the show. But that press and, public backing in sorts of the NFL behind your corner, that's what's coming out of it. That's what I like. And that's something I think the USFL still has to look at. They did get assistance from the NFL on at least talking about rules and concepts for this league. So they are.
And the officiating.
And the officiating, of course. Mike Pereira has stated, they're coming from the up and comers from the NFL. So the NFL very much, I think, wants this type of atmosphere where it's like, look, we see that we're the top of the sport, but I think more and more they realize we can't just go in and just mess things up during the season, or we can't just, keep being the top without at least having some sort of extra nuggets that people want in terms of football. Not everyone will be satisfied by just a season, then we sit on the sidelines and twiddle our thumbs. So that's what this comes in with the XFL. It's competition. I think that it makes it more enticing. I won't go as far as saying it's nothing. I think that it is something the USFL will keep an eye on, but the monetary proof that you'll be around is still what comes into focus. If there's no money exchanging hands, then to me, it's a great press piece that you can use to hopefully get to what you want in a few years. That's how I see it.
Yeah, for sure. This feels more like a good stepping stone for the league to jump in and say, hey, look, here's what we can do for you. Now, step 2, hey, how about we do this for you and this for you? And hey, how about some of that money or whatever it may be?
Because keep in mind, on that investors call, with Fox, as we've talked about, at least in the hub format, Fox has funding already. Like that. Oh, yeah. That money, those monies from outside investors, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So they already, with this concept, even if they're not in cities yet, if they had to do the hub again, they got the stuff ready for it, which is not ideal, but it's at least saying we're still here.
Oh, yeah.
And we can play again.
Yeah.
The XFL is going to be out in markets, supposedly. It's highly likely. It's not confirmed, but it's highly likely that they're going to do the same thing they did last time. So you're going to have a lot more expenses.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That'll be the thing that gets tested the most, but they will have a damn good marketing department, I guarantee you, to where it will be good competition.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm super excited about next year just to see bing, bang, boom, just league after league after league getting that year-round football. And, I mean, especially by next year, it'll be that season 2 for the USFL. So, the excitement's going to be at least double what it is now because, again, just looking back at the XFL, I say that a lot, but you and I see the buildup right now because we've been watching the USFL since it was announced in June. There's people right now, just from the draft, that are learning about the USFL. There's going to be people week 1 that are learning about it. There's going to be people all the way through the season, and it's only going to grow. The ratings might not, right? And that's expected. I mean, there's going to be a big, realistically, you're going to get your tops at the beginning and the end of the season. Now, here's the test is, what do the peaks look like at the tops and the bottoms? Does it go from like here down, or do we go here and kind of steady throughout the season and kind of get a cup and handle situation? And I think they can. At the end of the day, like we said, more leagues is more opportunities for these players, and I'll never be mad at that. I want them all to survive. I want them all to survive.
You can't be upset at that. It's competition for the leagues in terms of talent, but for the players, that means that they win because, another chance, even with, thousands of players out there, say the USFL doesn't work out. If you keep grinding, you keep waiting for your next opportunity. And if you want a league that's not, down in the indoor level, you can then wait. And that's no slight at the indoor level, by the way. That's just me saying, if you don't want to go indoor, then you can then get another chance with a new league. Or even, I know jokingly I'll say this, but MLFB still claims that they're going to be going. And I'm still watching to see what happens there. Not saying they'll be USFL or XFL level, but that's another avenue is the idea in that. So opportunities aplenty talking all this stuff. And that's what's exciting about this. Tell you what, let's circle back to what we were supposed to back in the draft. I know this will seem unorthodox to our listeners.
Yeah, they'll get over it.
We wanted to talk about this because it was the big splash. Let's rank the quarterbacks. Shall we
do that? Let's
go back and do it. We talked enough already in the recap. Let's get this.
I love the rankings thing. We did the jersey. I think the fans liked it. And even more importantly, it gives everybody a chance to give their intake, right? So our definitive version doesn't mean it's your definitive version, but this is our definitive version. We want to know your rankings down in the comments below. Good, bad, indifferent. If you agree with us, great. If you don't, we want to know. Now, I don't know. I don't necessarily think we need to go first to last, but I'm gonna pick a name here.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna start it off. So I'm gonna go. So I kind of talked about this earlier during the stream. I was maybe a little harsh on the Gamblers pick, Clayton Thorson. Now, after watching some of his highlights, I am fully on board, and I'm super excited to see him play. I don't know if I put him at number 1, but I'm thinking 2, 3. I absolutely know you disagree with me, but let's fight it out. Let's fight it out.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, some of these are going to be hard for me because I have arguments for like the middle portion being anywhere. So like if I were to do this solo, I would say it'd be like very slim like rankings where it's like I have to do this because I have to do this.
But that's kind of how it is
in terms of that mid pack.
Right.
So yeah, if we're talking Thorson, I don't know. I would put Thorson like 4 or 5, maybe.
Well, okay. We'll start him at 4, but we can move him up to 3 as we go.
We might rearrange this because I mean, there's a few of them I'm like, I know that there's 3 I would put instantly just off of my knowledge on the top 3 or 4. So
I'm curious.
I mean, what's your next one?
Well, I'm curious. Who would you put last?
Would I put last?
I have one in my head. If you want me to be the bad cop, I'll say it.
Well, I'm only going to do this because I need to see more proof. I talked about this with the Generals. I'm going to need to see Ben Holmes step up from his last stop. That again, I know that the guy was very much talented as one of the winningest quarterbacks at Tarleton State, but I'm referencing his spring league appearances, and I don't know. That's the only thing. A talented roster surrounding him, though. But he right now goes at my number 8.
Number 8. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's put him there for now because and this is nothing against him because I think he does follow us. So thanks for that. And again, this is all, we're talking like 8.1 to 8.3 is like the difference between all of these guys, right? So at number 8, there's basically 1, 2, and 3 in my book, right? There's a lot of this is even, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, and this is another one talking about proving himself. I would say Kyle Laletta. I would put him near the bottom as well. Now, I've heard the arguments both ways, and this is not anything with legal troubles or anything like that. Quite honestly, I don't know anything about that, so this doesn't come into play.
Sure.
I'm more looking at a couple things. The team around him, right? So again, looking at the Panthers, I mean, Patterson has a solid team around him. Teamu and Scott with the Bandits and the Stars, I think they have a good set of receivers that's going to keep them happy. Now, where I worry is Alex Magoo, Kyle Laletta, do they have, and now I know you thought that the Stallions had a stellar draft. I actually would have put it near the bottom. And again, we're talking like fractions of a difference that are separating these teams. But I would have like the Stars, the Generals, Panthers near the top in the top 3 as far as like the overall draft.
Sure, overall.
So I think that definitely impacts these ratings because again, we're not just rating the quarterback, the person. We got to rate how they're going to be able to utilize the teams around them. Mm-hmm. So I honestly, and again, no offense to you, Kyle Laletta, but I had him. That was my 8.
Okay, I mean, I had. Laletta has an impressive resume at Richmond. So, like coming out of the draft, he was actually, ranking higher up in the QBs. It's just that, it wasn't likely he was going to get a starting spot. That was
Right.
the thing. He was going
Right.
to be
Right.
he was going to be in the backup position for his tenure in the NFL. And you know what? I mean, honestly, just based on the resume alone, like I couldn't put him last. Like his time at Richmond, he really did shine. Um, but I think for now, I mean, if I'm looking at just the overall QB room, he does go at 7 for me.
Okay.
That is where I'm putting him at the time being.
Okay. So so we have Shea Patterson, Jordan Teamu, Brian Scott, Alex Magoo, Kyle Slaughter left.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I have my top 3 in my head. So I think we get the rough ones out of the way, the Band-Aid pulls. Let's get the bottom of the list done. So I would say probably, at least what I'm looking at now, Slaughter at 5, Magoo at 6. I think just, again, based off of the teams around them. The teams around them, but I could be swayed. I could be swayed to go either way. And again, we might move some of these around. But do you have an argument for the other path here?
Well, I know like Slaughter and Magoo both have NFL experience. I think. See, it's funny. I actually have Magoo as like my 4.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And that's just for the fact that, I love the intangibles and ability he has from when he has time at FIU. I think that really sticks out. Slaughter, his shining moment. At least with Denver in the preseason, he put up some solid numbers in 2017. And as of course for some Minnesota fans I saw online, they really they really like him too. I think just with his time away, getting back in the saddle, he's done a lot of practice squad work. I think that's why I put him at 6, but he does have a lot of people that have giving him upside. So, that's why I couldn't put him behind the lead. At least like Slaughter's been around the NFL a lot longer. And I think there's reasons for that more so. And I'm going to put him there,
So
I also like
Slaughter 6.
Yes, I think Slaughter. Yeah, Slaughter.
Slaughter or Slaughter? Yeah, I don't know, quite honestly. So I apologize.
Add that to the name.
We'll get it on the next show.
Like I said, re-add that. But he's at 6 for me. And then I actually have Thorson 5. Where do you have Thorson? Come on.
I had him at number 2, but I moved him to 4. And I
tell you what.
Let's do let's start with the top 3, and then we'll figure out the 4-5 situation. So are we are we at least in agreement that Shea Patterson, Jordan Teamu, and Brian Scott are the top 3?
Yes.
Okay.
They're in the top 3 for both of us. And I think that's reasonable to argue.
Who do you think? Do you have an affinity towards one or the other for the number 1?
I almost sound like an XFL homer if I say Ta'amu, but I honestly want to see more out of Patterson. That's why I can't put him at 1. I know that people, like even Fox Sports with their write-ups, they're like, he's got high upside. I'm like, I agree. He does. He's needing more time, but he has the intangibles to put it all together. And Michigan has a good roster, and he's got Jeff Fisher, of course, to back him up, to give him support. I don't right out of the gate though. I mean, if I'm looking at experience, I mean, Ta'amu, I have to argue that he goes at 1, and I think that you put 1A, 1B as Ta'amu and Brian Scott. Just because
I almost agree there.
Just because of the recent play in a professional setting with the TSL and the XFL, these two have not been away from the field too long, and even Ta'amu's been in the NFL scene. His talent's recognized, and also Ta'amu. I'm going to be frank. I had him mock drafted here in Tampa Bay because he fits Todd Haley's system very well. Todd Haley is a heavy RPO guy. That is right in his wheelhouse. And I'm telling you, that the Bandits are going to be fun to watch because of the fact that offense is built around Jordan. It's perfectly built around Jordan.
So I agree with you there. I think Ta'amu goes number 1, and for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned. So beyond having like experience recently, it was with the XFL. It was one of the top 2 teams, arguably. I think by the standings, I think weirdly enough they were behind the Defenders at the end of the year. But realistically, it was a tied schedule. Ta'amu has grown since then, and I think this is going to be kind of like that breakout year. It was almost his breakout year with the XFL, but I think he has the tools around him and the familiarity. I mean, he's not going to be throwing to a Bruno Reagan, but it's always nice to have somebody around you, though, that you knew, right? That's going to be helpful in itself.
Don't underestimate the connection between a center and a quarterback. Trust me, I was a center in high school, and funny enough, Aaron Ellis was my quarterback, as we were talking on the stream. It is important to have that connection right out of the gate, especially on the line. So that is a valuable pickup that they had. And I imagine Jordan was one of the guys saying in his ear, like, you got to get Bruno if he's here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that connection alone from back in 2020, wouldn't doubt it came up. So it fits the offense well. Like Jordan easily. Scott goes too because of the fact they got pieces around him that he's familiar with, and dude's just an underrated talent, and people still don't know who he is.
This is what I love about Brian Scott, at least this year. He's going to be the guy that everybody, after like 2-3 weeks, people are going to be like, whoa, this guy is electric. This guy is fun to watch. And that's going to be fun to watch online, is all the new fans that get to learn about Brian Scott. Because, I mean, you and I, we've seen more than a handful of exciting plays from this dude, and I can't wait to see him in the USFL. With, again, the familiar coach thing is going to be huge for him, right? Having that consistency coming through, sign him up. I think they're good to go. So, I mean, that puts Shea Patterson at number 3. But, again, these top 3, even really all of them, we're talking like fractions of a decimal separating them all. But I think you hit the nail on the head. When we look at the top 2, they've played more recently at a semi-higher level, if you will, right?
Correct.
Shea Patterson, I think he's going to be a stud, and I think he's going to ball out in this league, but he needs to show it, right? He needs to come in, he needs to show it, and he has that competition. Now, at the end of the day, at the end of the season when we do this, I could easily see him bumping up to that number 1 spot if he wins out on that quarterback competition, because it's those competitions that really make these players strive. I mentioned it earlier with the Roughnecks, with Connor Cook and PJ Walker, and I think we have that scenario brewing here with the Panthers, to where even I would love to see both of them playing throughout the season, switch them up a little bit too, because I think they both have a different fun style of play. But Shea Patterson, I think he needs that. If this was maybe after week 1 or 2, this might be different. But right now, before the play, number 3. But that ain't bad. I mean, top 3.
Not at all.
Top 3.
No, not at all. So we got to revisit.
Yeah, so now we got to figure out 4 or 5.
Magoo and Thorsten.
Magoo and Thorsten. So let me ask you this. When's the last time you watched a Clayton Thorsten highlight video?
Or is this how we're going to decide it?
Because this is how it is. And it goes long as hell, and the guy catches it, and they score time and time and time again.
I mean, you aren't wrong. Like, those were some of the best recent years in Northwestern football.
I have a second argument.
I'm not going to, I mean, Big Ten play, so you're playing with with a lot more likely NFL caliber talent. That's not saying that you can't, but yes, that surrounding is a lot better, I think, for evaluation. You know.
Second argument, Midwest is the best. Northwestern, it's almost in the name, and it is in the Midwest.
I mean, if you want me to be a homer even more, I root for Chicago sports area teams. Technically, Evanston is a suburb of Chicago, so I can do that too. If we're doing the fan choice, it's like that's the deal. But I mean, Thorsten, he again, his tenure with Northwestern was pretty solid. Those are some of the better Northwestern teams in recent history under Pat Fitzgerald, who, by the way, great consistent piece in college football and in the Big Ten that I think doesn't get as much credit nationally as he does, but in the Big Ten realm, he gets a ton of recognition for what he's done for that program. I mean, I guess if we're going to talk about the factor of like level, maybe that's how I rate it to where I'm okay. Mm-hmm. But I have a lot of upside in Alex Magoo. Like, I'm serious. I am looking forward to seeing this kid play. But I guess for the early season one, because that's really what this is, I'm okay with putting Thorson 4 only for that fact.
I'll
because
take
we get
it.
to see him that
I'm not even going to argue with you anymore because I got my way this time. But this is what I think should be fun. I think we do this midway through the season, and we do it again at the end of the season.
We should,
and we could look back on this and say either wow, we were so right, or oh my God, we were so wrong.
We absolutely should mark that down, because with any spring football league, this was even brought up too with those that are much more tuned with this type of football than others. You know darn well that by the end of the year, I would say at least 2 of these guys are not going to be starting.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but it's just the beast. That is the beast of spring football. Is going to happen.
I mean, we saw it with the XFL. We saw it with the AAF. We've seen it time and time again. So, yeah, I mean, it's very possible that that's what we see here. I mean, heck, we saw it with the spring league even in 1 or 2 cases as well.
Eventually, you have to have a loser with winners, and those coaches will start to flip things around if their QBs are the problem, you know. Now, if everything's sunshine and rainbows with quarterbacks and it's like line play or your defense is like a wet paper napkin, then yeah, we don't have to talk about it that way. But odds are at least, I'll even go even less, at least one's going to be flipped around for their backup.
Oh, absolutely.
At least one. I'll put it at that. Bare minimum. But
so I think this list's looking pretty good. Let me just run it down real quick, just so for the audio listeners especially. Sure. I always forget we have audio listeners. I always just assume it was always on YouTube, but this will be important.
Got to check out the YouTube version then.
You're missing out. You're missing out. I actually do wear a ref shirt most of the time. So number 1, we got Jordan Teamu. 2, Brian Scott. 3, Shea Patterson. 4, Clayton Thorson, Houston Gambler, all in. Number 5, Alex Magoo. Number 6, Kyle Slaughter or Sloter. We'll figure that one out. 7, Kyle Laletta, and 8, Ben Holmes. And this is nothing against any of these players, because I'll reiterate again. I do want to read it because I bet you maybe 1 or 2 of these guys might watch. We're talking fractions of a decimal point in difference here. I mean, realistically, like I said, we almost have a 1, 2, 3 and a tie for 4 for the rest. It's kind of how I see it. And even it could even be a tie for 3. That's how close we are, even on that level, in my opinion. Now, halfway through the season, we can look at this and heartily laugh or heartily say, we told you so. But we're going to find that out soon.
Very soon. Good, solid stuff. Want to hear your guys' rankings, by the way, much like we did with the jerseys. Feel free to drop that in the comments if you're watching online, or if if you're listening to the podcast version and you want to do that, head on over there, drop it in there too. I mean, we love to see these type of opinions. Please feel free to do so, because I mean, it's early season. There's a lot more that you're going to be kind of watching out to see how this pans out. Technically, we're all speculating as to how this pans out. So we're all in the speculation zone on the rankings for quarterbacks in one way, shape, or another. Speaking of speculation zone, one last piece before we leave. And this is one that now people are starting to turn their focus. With the USFL, it's everything. You get that big splash. People all of a sudden start going, all right, give me the other thing. Come on. Schedules. The full schedule. We know the championship. We know the playoffs. We know the home opener. There's folks, and I feel bad because I know like a good buddy of ours for the show, Ken Gill, he wants to be down there the whole weekend, but he needs the rest of the weekend.
Right.
When do we see the whole schedule?
I've seen that from a couple people too. Van, I can't remember his last name.
Van Phillips.
Yeah, he's another one. He travels everywhere. He travels everywhere for these things. So I know there's a couple guys that are amped for it. I mean, the best I could say is you can just assume there's games on Sunday. Now, here, I think the big question is there going to be a game on Monday that week, right? If we're only getting one game Friday on Saturday, well, the opening weekend is Saturday, right?
Right. Oh, well, sorry. I'm thinking overall schedule.
Oh, week 2. Well, yeah, we're going to.
To your point. Yeah. To your point for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, week 1, we could see a Monday game. And so, like me personally, I'm flying out Monday morning. So if there is, I mean, I'm watching it on TV. I'll tell you, my wife is such a saint. Her birthday is the 19th. So I'm flying back in the 18th, which is cutting it a little close. But she didn't even give me a hard time. So sign her up on that.
Respect there.
Now schedules. Now, I mean, we've heard reports that it could come. We heard reports that it could come as early as the Monday before the draft, but I think I checked into that and that was hogwash right away. The other thing we've heard is that it could be shortly after the draft, which No duh. I mean, if you ask me, between the draft and the start of the season, that's shortly after the draft. If you ask me, right, it's not that much far after. So yeah, duh. Now I don't know. The USFL seems to be in a rhythm here. I would say probably in the next 2 weeks, and maybe this is how they kick off March, right? So next week, kick off March. You know, you had a lot of news. You don't have maybe a lot to drop bing, bang, booms every day like we did last week with the lead up to the draft. But hey, if you can get a release out every week or maybe something consistent like that until the season kicks off, I think you're looking good, because then you drop the schedules. Then you're what? Then the next week is the training camp. Maybe they start putting out more materials, interviews from the training camp itself, and then we roll into the season. That's when I hope we see them again. This is all speculation zone.
Yes, it is.
Speculation zone. But I think not rather just shortly after, but sooner rather than later is my take. And this is not based off anything I've been told, at least.
Mm-hmm. Speculation zone. I say it's going to be next week. And here's why. I think you keep the media trainer rolling. You have everyone drafted. They've had time behind the scenes probably to already be scheduling out this, and especially with Canton being the place to go now. They've sorted out the World Games thing. They aren't sitting and kind of going, will we, won't we anymore. I think they do it. I think that they hammer it out. They get it done to open March and keep this train rolling. And then they start adding more media, like talks with players and such, like they've been doing with the draft. But keep the train rolling. Add the schedule in next week, right after March 1st, like that back half of the week, like they like to do, and just keep on doing it. Or, you know, if you really want to be really friendly, I'll be happy with this too. Drop it on Monday, March 7th during my birthday. Oh. I will gladly take that as a birthday present from the league.
Sign it up. Yeah.
Just being honest. That'll be a nice one.
Yeah. I mean, sign him up there. Now, I disagree because I like to be right. So do it next week, but drop something else on the 7th, or drop something else next week and drop something and drop that on the 7th. I mean, just drop something on the 7th. You heard it here, folks. It's Zach Kallman's birthday. He's going to be a birthday boy. I'll send you a beer virtually somehow.
Sure.
We'll get, maybe we'll do a virtual happy hour and get crunk, as they say, or as they used to say.
Start working the details.
Yeah.
Out on that. I'll get crunk. I'll get crunk, I guess.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, man. I hope that would be nice if it happens. I'll tell you that. But I think your projection of 2 weeks, some point before training camp, it has to drop. Like that's got to be the case. I think they'd be bonkers to wait till March 21st, past the supplemental draft, and then go, oh yeah, it's April now. Okay, now the schedule's
right.
That wouldn't be enough time. You need at least a month for people to get used to what they're going to watch and maybe time things out, go to games.
If I were to guess,
that's the case.
If I were to guess, they probably have the schedule ready.
If not very close.
Very close, right? I mean, realistically, it's a lot easier when you don't have to travel, right? So there's like a whole aspect that you don't have to take into account. It's just more of, did the right amount of teams play the right amount of teams this year? Right?
Good point.
That's basically it. I mean, you don't have to worry about, travel to this city is more expensive at this year, so we want to actually have the people go down south during it, right? There's none of that. So, if it isn't done, it's going to be done closely after. I think they're more so getting that marketing push ready because, I mean, now that we have the players, we have the coaches, I expect things like, hey, I'm Jordan Teamu, quarterback for the Tampa Bay Bandits. And come April 17th, I'm taking on so-and-so in our very first matchup in Birmingham. Bring it on. Or maybe some of some of those types of things that, quite honestly, take time, a little bit more time than the rapid fire of dragging in images in a template, right? Because people need to speak and you need to edit and you need to do all sorts of things. But either way, I'll say this. If we've learned anything from the USFL so far, is not just going to be, hey, here's our schedule. It's going to be either 2 hours of the herd and here's our schedule, or some sweet announcement. Like we're going to get we'll get something out of it, some type of, I don't want to say an event, like a physical event, but like an event online where we can all say, hey, tomorrow, did you see that the USFL announced last night that they're going to drop the schedules, or the morning of, or whatever it may be? There's going to be some excitement around it, and I expect to see the media push around it because, dude, we talked about the draft and the social media team, but I mean, clearly they have the people in place right now. That marketing machine is moving, and it's been ramping up. It's been kind of a slow burn, but we're getting close to that season, and it seems like every week is getting bigger. Even if there's not a lot of news, we're at least seeing these personalities or these different teams come out of their shell, right? I think the Stars, there's a couple teams, the Stars and I think the Bandits have a pretty good meme game going on so far. And again, I don't think every team has a dedicated social media person, but we've been seeing them. And I'm appreciating them, so keep them coming. Complete
the trifecta. Put it on Undisputed.
Yeah. The
Holy Trinity will be complete. Put the schedule release on Undisputed. Let me hear Skip Bayless talk with Shannon Sharp about it or argue about it.
Yes.
What's your favorite game of the year? And Skip will say something, then you'll get Shannon's classic. Skip.
Right.
No, Skip. Stop, Skip. Since the only Texas team will be for the Gamblers, Skip will pick the Gamblers because it's got to be something somewhat close to the Dallas Cowboys.
You know what? I'll take it. I'm on this side this time. I usually don't like Skip, but you know what? Sign him up. We're on, Texas. I can't ever.
Last piece we got, and it's because we get our good buddy here with this. We do have a mailbag this week.
Mailbag.
Thank you, Jim Renier, for submitting a voicemail mailbag as well. And I know he was actually, it's funny. He's like, hey, where do I put this? And I'll let you guys know where he put this. Going to usflcast.com, you can go to the bottom of the page. We have a widget that you can record your voicemail directly to us. You send the file, you essentially record it, hit confirm, and we get to play it on your show. And we get to play Jim's right now.
Hey, this is that Jim, Jim Renier, Jim Mernier, the host of Controlling the Chaos podcast and Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Kyleman. Boys, football is only 60-some days away. Can't wait for spring stock because your boy Jim Renier is going to steal the show. Can't wait for everyone to be there. Come to spring stock. Follow me at J-904. Peace, ref. Peace, Zach. Kick-ass show.
Now sign him up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. he'll be one of the guys, inside the walls. So I do a lot of stuff with him, but he'll be at spring stock too. So you'll be able to meet him in person along with us and even Tron Hopkins and all the other guests. But he's a great dude. I glad he got to chime in with a little bit there on the mailbag for us. So yeah, much appreciated. Stefan, unless I missed anything, I think that's it, man.
I think we're good. We had quite honestly, we had a very hearty discussion. Like I said, I'm excited to see if all of the new subscribers continue to like the show. If you do, make sure you hit the likes, make sure you hit the subscribes, make sure you hit the bell. There's no reason to let the morale slip away. That's all I'm saying. That's free morale for the taking.
Keep the good spirits up. Hit the bell.
Hit the bell. It builds morale. You'll feel good about yourself. But let us know in the comments. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Because quite honestly, I want us to be the best show ever. Not even just the best USFL show. I want us to be a top-notch show. Entertaining, yes. Newsworthy, of course. But if there's things you like to see, let us know. If there's things you don't, let us know.
And with all the new subscribers, we definitely want to hear from you, especially since you joined in after the live stream. This is your first experience with the regular show that's recorded. Feel free to tell us. We are open to feedback all the time. That is a policy of ours that Stefan and I have said since the beginning. We like hearing from you. Please, we implore you. Tell us what you think. We always appreciate reading your comments.
For sure. Let your voices be heard. Speaking of which, we have a link to a Discord, which I think we're over 700 people in the Discord now.
I think it's booming.
It's a good time. If you like to talk football, whether it's XFL, CFL, NFL, USFL, and even other sports, come join the conversations. Let your voices be heard. Click the link down in the description below and join us. Even Zach and I, we're on there as well. Sometimes I'm a busy boy. So sometimes I'm not there all the time, but I'm watching. Trust me, I'm watching. I'm looking at what you kids are saying. And we're just having a good time over there. So if you like to talk football, sign you up on the link below.
All right. Without further ado, though, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on social at USFL Podcast. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you next week. Same time, same place. Stay tuned.